Hi everyone, this is Grace, and today we are going to be learning how to decorate this nurse appreciation set. It's super cute, super fun, pretty small, simple set, so I'm excited to get started. First up, we have the scrubs here, and I am doing a single consistency, a one consistency outline in Flood. I think... Yes, for the entire set. The entire set has one consistency. If you followed along for a while, you know that I use both 1 and 2. I'm comfortable with both. It just depends on the set and the needs of the set. There was nothing in this that really required that I use 2 consistencies, and I was really trying to make this set kind of, in a way, as simple as possible to execute. So I went with just 1 consistency. And I'm leaving space on the cuffs and the collar of the shirt so that I can go in and do a little extra detail on those. I will say, back to the single consistency, when I use 1 consistency, I'm using a thick flood. So a thick flood for me means that it just barely falls off the spoon in a trickle when you pick up the spoon from the bowl and turn it upside down. Just barely comes off in a trickle. A thin flood will just completely waterfall off the spoon. So what you didn't see here, because I edited this out, was I waited a couple of minutes for the main part of the shirt to just barely crust so that there is definition for the cuffs and the neckline. I didn't wait for it to completely crust for 2 reasons. Number 1 was I didn't want there to be a super big definition in between those 2 sections. And number 2, I was also just kind of lazy because the more you have to wait in between sections to dry, just the longer it all takes. So I was able to just flood all of the shirts and then go back through before putting them in the dehydrator to do the cuffs and the collar. What I'm doing here for the stethoscope is I'm using a soft peak piping consistency. Soft peak means that when you pick up the spoon and turn it upright, the peak falls over completely smooth, but still maintains the integrity of the fallen over peak. Here, I'm doing these pockets with the same flood consistency. Now, I was definitely playing with fire here in terms of craters. I popped these in the dehydrator ASAP. I think I managed to not get any craters. Or maybe like so slightly noticeable that it wasn't noticeable. But that is the scrubs. Next up is the bandaid, and I think this is my favorite cookie of the entire set, and you will see why, because I played with some fun texture-y type stuff, and you probably know that I love texture. So this first part was where I was trying to figure out how to do the pad in the middle without having to flood separate sections. I think that's how most people do band-aids, like flooding it in 3 sections so you get that definition in between them. But I wanted that true band-aid look where there was just that raised bit in the middle for the pad. So this is again my thick flood for a 1 consistency outline in Flood. And right away, I'm going in here and I'm not allowing that flood to crust. I'm using the same flood consistency just on the surface. Well, no, I'm puncturing the surface of the flood. And I'm basically injecting that same flood icing into the flood that I flooded it with in the first place. It is a thick flood. I'm not using like piping consistency. And I think because it's a thick flood, it's just holding its shape. You do not want this to crust over. If you can see that little like wrinkle on the bottom, that's a sign that the flood started to crust, and so it's kind of got a ripple in it. Not ideal, but good enough. And here for these perforated dots, because they're actually holes in a band-aid, or often they're holes. I'm using piping consistency, and I'm piping this on wet flood because I wanted the dots to kind of sink in a little bit. If I had waited it for the base to completely flood, then they would have been more like 3D dots. So that's the Band-Aid. Up next is the RN. This is what one might call a hand-lettered plaque, and that means that the shape of this cookie cutter was designed specifically around this lettering. That's definitely my favorite kind of lettered cookie to do, is one with a cookie cutter specifically made for it, because it just makes doing this free-handed a lot easier, which is what I will be doing here, free-handed as opposed to using a projector to trace. I'm doing my one consistency outline in flood. For black icing, I use the Sugar Art Master Elite in black. It's a highly pigmented powder that's activated with water. I do not use black gel food coloring anymore because it just requires way too much food coloring and it messes with the texture of the icing for me. So I love using the Master Elites from the Sugar Art, not just for black, for other highly pigmented colors as well. And here I'm using my Soft Peak piping consistency, although to be honest, I'm looking at this and it might be a little thicker than a Soft Peak, but close enough. Also don't love how I started that R, but here we are. I had one shot to get it right. And I did practice a few times with some food grade cellophane on top to get that RN right. And here we are with some edible glitter, also by the Sugar Art. This is their Diamond Dust, completely edible. Love that stuff. I like it in white. Up next, we've got the pill bottle. Also had a little bit of fun with this one. All of these cookie cutters are from the Nurse set from Brighton Cutters. I will link that in the description of the video. Some of these are pretty small, like the RN is a mini cookie, one would say. For size reference, the Scrubs are definitely a more like standard 3.5 inch cookie. So when I did this, I decided to flood in sections, so I allow the pink sections to crust. Oh, let's pause to appreciate my tiny little sprinkle spoon. I don't know where I got this. It might have been CookieCon last year in my grab bag or something. Super useful. There we are with my scribe, getting unyieldy there. Now I decided to, again, flood in sections here, which means I allow those pink sections to crust before moving on to flood the white, so there's definition in between the sections. I kind of wish that I hadn't waited for the white parts to crust for that center piece that I'm about to flood. I wish I had done this while the pink was wet, so it was just one flat continuous surface. But here we are. You live, you learn. You see that little sprinkle? I'm just going right over it. Since I was already filming and I didn't see the little sprinkle, I just decided to, whatever, flood over it instead of take it out in the video. I've allowed that to dry. I think I actually had to allow it to dry completely because I am going to be using an edible marker in a second. This is just a Soft Peak piping consistency, piping this detail. On the edible marker note, do not try to use edible marker on a not fully dried surface. Especially some of the edible markers really puncture through icing surfaces super easily. Do yourself a favor and wait till it dries completely. This was the other thing where I was outlining the label And so it was kind of pointless to take that time to do those sections separately, because I just ended up covering the separation anyway. So this looks like this is a Sweet Sugar Bell edible marker. I have a lot of different edible markers. Some are linked in my Amazon shop. And that is the pill bottle prescription cookies. Speaking of cookies. So here are just some fun, simple pills. And again, I'm doing a 1 consistency, outline, and flood. I actually find working with sprinkles kind of hard sometimes because it's really easy to over sprinkle, and then your icing, it really spreads out your icing and makes the icing want to spill over, which makes me sad. So using my handy dandy little sprinkle, I usually like to pour over the sprinkles like that instead of pressing the icing into the sprinkles, because that will really, like, it actually presses the icing and you lose some of that definition. I'm using my scribe here to make sure that I'm getting all the sprinkles intact in the right shape. And I didn't allow that to dry. I'm just going right in with my other flood. This is a really small pill, by the way. It's maybe an inch. This one is bigger. It's probably maybe 2 inches, maybe 1.5 inches. Those black spots, by the way, are Nielsen Massey vanilla bean paste. I'm a big fan. And this here, oh, am I gonna do it? Yeah, I'm just gonna press it in. This is just Wilton non-pry sprinkles in black, white, and pink that I mixed together myself. Nothing fancy. I don't use sprinkles a lot, so I just buy, for the most part, I just get Wilton sprinkles, and I make my own mixes if I want to have a variety. So kind of immediately after I pressed this, I did regret doing it because it just presses the icing too much and it kind of spills over the edge. But I survived. The cookie pill also survived. This is such a deep black. And when you use the Sugar Art Master Elites, it doesn't get that bitter flavor from too much food coloring because you don't have to use nearly as much as you have to with the gel food coloring. And last but not least, we have the heart, which I'm also pretty excited about. Just rocking my 1 consistency outline and flood here. I love this heart shape from Brighton Cutters, by the way. It is their Charmed Heart, I believe. I love it because it has very soft angles. Nothing is too pronounced. Like the point at the bottom is not too pronounced. And it's just a really versatile heart, in my opinion. I have it in all of the sizes, I think. This is my favorite scribe from Borderlands Bakery. You've seen me now use 3 scribes in this set. Those are the 3 scribes I always have out. And this here, this font, I will link in the description of the video. I'm blanking on the name of it at this moment. I just thought this was fun. I wanted it to look like a heart rate. Nurse appreciation sets are super common in the cookie world, and a lot of people do hearts, and they'll do like a heartbeat monitor image, and then they'll write thank you on it, but I wanted it to, the heartbeat, to actually say thank you. So the way I do this is I will download the font onto my computer, I will type out the words I want to do into Word, and then I take a screenshot of that and I make a file out of it. And then I use that on my projector. I don't know if there's a better way to do it, but it's the way that I do it. Speaking of projector, that's also linked in the description of my video. I have 2 projectors. I have the first one I ever bought, which is like the most basic starter one that a lot of people buy. That's called the Pico projector. And then I have what I call my Bluetooth projector. And it can connect via Bluetooth instead of cords, which is nice. That is the thank you cookie, and that's the whole set. Look at that. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? I had so much fun talking you through this set, and I really hope that you thank a nurse and you maybe make some of these cookies yourself. So, thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a sweet one.